the case that exposed racial bias. The courthouse steps were quiet in the way only important days ever were. No chanting, no cameras yet, just a handful of reporters pretending not to rehearse their questions and a few lawyers pretending not to rehearse their lies. The marble columns of the Franklin County Justice Center rose like indifferent witnesses, polished smooth by decades of verdicts that had gone unnoticed outside these walls. Inside courtroom 4B, 12 jurors would soon decide whether the system had done what it had always claimed to do, treat everyone equally, or whether, once again, it had hidden its prejudice behind procedure. For most of the country, it would become a headline. For one family, it was survival. And for one woman, it was the case that would change everything. Marcus Reed was driving home from his night shift when the police lights appeared in his rearview mirror. He wasn't speeding. His seatbelt was on. The radio hummed low, a late-night sports recap filling the silence of Interstate 71. Marcus had learned long ago not to make sudden movements, not to ask unnecessary questions, not to sound annoyed or afraid. He pulled over carefully. "License and registration," the officer said, hand resting near his holster. Marcus complied. "Where are you headed tonight?" "Home, just got off work." The officer studied him longer than necessary. The pause stretched. Marcus could feel his heart accelerating, not from guilt but from experience. "Step out of the vehicle." "For what reason, sir?" "Step out of the vehicle." Within minutes backup arrived, a search followed, then another. When the officer finally held up a small plastic bag containing a white powder, Marcus felt something crack inside him. Not shock, but disbelief hardened into dread. "That's not mine," Marcus said, his voice steady but strained. The officer didn't respond. By sunrise, Marcus Reed, 32 years old, college-educated, no criminal record, was charged with possession with intent to distribute. By noon, his mugshot was circulating online. By nightfall, his life had already begun to collapse. Alicia Monroe stared at the case file long after the office lights dimmed. She had been a public defender for 12 years, long enough to recognize patterns, long enough to know when something didn't sit right. The arrest report read clean, too clean. Probable cause established, evidence recovered, suspect non-cooperative. It was all there, and yet. "Another drug stop," her colleague muttered from the next desk. "They've been sweeping the South End hard lately." Alicia didn't answer. She had grown up believing the law was a shield. Her father, a retired school principal, had taught her that fairness wasn't automatic, it had to be fought for. Still, even she hadn't anticipated how often the fight would be uphill. Marcus Reed's file felt heavier than most. She scheduled the jail visit the next morning. Marcus sat across from her in the interview room, hands folded, eyes tired but alert. "I didn't do it," he said before she could speak. "I know," Alicia replied. "Tell me everything." He did. About the shift at the warehouse, about the route home he always took, about the officer who had followed him for nearly a mile before turning on the lights. "I asked why I was being stopped," Marcus said. "He said my taillight was out. It was." Alicia made notes. "They searched my car 3 times, Marcus continued. "Didn't find anything until the last one, and suddenly there it was." "Did you consent to the search?" "No." "Did they have a warrant?" "No." Alicia looked up. "Marcus, this case matters," she said carefully. "Not just for you." He met her eyes. "I just want my life back." Alicia requested body cam footage. It arrived incomplete. She requested dispatch logs. They arrived redacted. She subpoenaed maintenance records for Marcus's car. The taillight worked perfectly. Late one night, buried in unrelated case data, Alicia noticed something unsettling. Over the past 18 months, nearly 70% of drug arrests made by the same patrol unit involved black drivers, despite the district's population being less than 30% black. Coincidence was one thing. Consistency was another. She compiled the data, charted it, cross-referenced it. What emerged wasn't just Marcus's case. It was a pattern. When Alicia brought her findings to the prosecutor's office, the response was immediate and hostile. "You're accusing our department of racial profiling," Assistant District Attorney Paul Whitman said, folding his arms. "I'm presenting data," Alicia replied calmly. Whitman smiled thinly. "Statistics don't prove intent. They prove disparity." Whitman leaned back. "Be careful, Ms. Monroe. You don't want to turn a simple possession case into something political." Alicia stood. It was never simple. The first article ran in a local paper. Public Defender, ALLEGS Racial Bias in Drug Arrests. By the end of the week, national outlets followed. Cable news panels debated law enforcement discretion. Comment sections erupted. Some called Marcus a victim. Others called him a criminal playing the race card. Marcus's mother stopped answering the phone. Marcus lost his job. Alicia received anonymous emails telling her to stick to real law. She deleted them. 2 weeks before trial, Alicia received a package with no return address. Inside was a flash drive. The contents made her sit down. Internal emails between officers, jokes, slang, references to easy stops. A message from the arresting officer stood out. "South End's good hunting." Alicia felt her pulse spike. This wasn't circumstantial. This was explicit. The courtroom was packed on the first day of trial. Jurors watched closely as Alicia dismantled the arrest step by step. She played the body cam footage, pausing when the officer mentioned the tail light. She introduced maintenance records. She displayed arrest data. Then she presented the emails. The room went silent. Whitman objected. The judge overruled. For the first time, the system had to look at itself in the mirror. Marcus's voice trembled at first. Then it steadied. "I followed every rule," he said. "I did everything right, and it still wasn't enough." Several jurors nodded. One wiped away tears. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, no one breathed. "Not guilty." The words echoed. Marcus exhaled, hands shaking. Alicia closed her eyes. But the case wasn't over. The judge ordered an independent review of the department. The arresting officer was suspended, then fired. The city announced policy reforms. Civil rights groups cited the case nationwide. And Marcus, he didn't celebrate. "I lost 2 years," he said quietly, "but maybe someone else won't." Alicia turned down private firm offers. She stayed. Because justice, she had learned, wasn't a moment. It was a process. And sometimes, it took one case to expose what many had always known. Months later, Alicia passed the courthouse steps again. This time, cameras were everywhere. But inside, something had shifted. Not enough. Never enough. But enough to prove that silence, once broken, never quite returns. And that one case, just one, can expose the truth hiding in plain sight. The case that exposed racial bias is not just a story about the law. It is a reminder that justice is not blind by default. It must be made to see. And sometimes it takes courage not just to fight the system, but to make it change. For more stories that examine justice, accountability, and the real consequences of silence, subscribe to the channel and remember to like and share.